Yeah, and it's like the real Tony Stark. It's like back somehow, and there's like a moment where she's flying through, and he's like, "Who is that?" And she's like, "I'm Ironheart, Mr. Stark." And he's like, "I like that girl." And then he like goes to do something else. Like that would be like the level of something that I think would possibly happen.
Natalie AI thing seems utterly preposterous and ridiculous. And even for an MCU show, I'm finding it to be a little bit of a bridge too far to go. The heist crew, all lame. Every single one of them, all lame.
Watch the series and it's just hot garbage. It still has right now on IMDb a 3.7 out of 10. That's like Snow White level bad. It's the worst thing that Disney streaming has ever produced. So these are the reviews on IMDb. You can see here, 52% now giving it a 1 star.
The Marvel Cinematic Universe just hit a wall, and its name is Ironheart. As of July 6th, 2025, all 6 episodes have dropped on Disney+. But what was once hyped as a bold new chapter has quickly turned into one of the MCU's most talked about disasters. Viewership is tanking, fan enthusiasm is almost non-existent, and social media is flooded with brutal reviews.
That is all ego. You would never find me with an ego like that, not with my fallopian tubes.
First Ironheart reactions are in. Does it defy the haters? Or is it another skippable series? It's always about you, right? It's always about the audience. It's amazing. It doesn't matter if it's the 2024 election or whether it's a Disney streaming product. It's always about like, how evil is the actual voters? How evil are the audience?
The most shocking part, even the much anticipated reveal of Mephisto, played by none other than Sacha Baron Cohen, couldn't rescue it. That's right, a major Marvel villain, a casting choice meant to shake the foundation of the franchise, made barely a ripple. This wasn't just a miss, it was a warning siren. Despite months of marketing, legacy ties to Tony Stark, and a promise to push the MCU forward, Ironheart may have done more damage than Marvel ever expected. And this is just the beginning of the fallout. Dominique, Thorne, who plays Riri Williams in Ironheart, hasn't stayed silent amid the show's poor reception. Instead, she's taken a bold and divisive stance, directly addressing critics and frustrated fans.
It deserves your attention. Ironheart deserves your attention. That's how I knew. I was like, oh, they are desperate to get people to watch this damn show. After I did my reaction, I kept getting, hey, it wasn't that bad. I just watched it. Hey, I just watched the first 3 episodes. It wasn't that bad.
In recent comments, Thorne doubled down on the show's emphasis on diversity and LGBTQ representation, urging fans to stop focusing on what she describes as hidden messages and instead appreciate the inclusivity the show brings. She argued that criticism of these elements often stems from political talking points rather than genuine issues with the storytelling. According to her, characters like Slug, who represents drag culture, are essential breakthroughs for Marvel, and she believes the fanbase needs to adapt to this new direction. Thorne's passionate defense hasn't gone unnoticed.
And why she's frustrated. That's how I feel watching her interviews.
How do you feel about the impact that she's having on young Black girls? And I'm going to be completely honest, on Black women.
You know, this is yet another area that's getting vibrant. It's getting full in the way that it should be.
But rather than calming the backlash, it's only fueled more division within the fandom. Thorne's statements didn't just echo across fan forums, they ignited them. Many Marvel fans saw her comments not as a defense of inclusivity, but as a dismissal of valid criticism. Online discussions quickly shifted from the show itself to debates about identity politics, storytelling priorities, and what audiences actually want from the MCU. While some praised her for standing her ground, others felt alienated, accusing the production of putting messaging before narrative quality. At the same time, Marvel executives attempted to soften the blow, launching their own wave of damage control by downplaying negative reviews and pushing positive sound bites in interviews.
Going out there from the media that you are just a racist if you don't like Ironheart. The reason it's getting this backlash, the reason it's getting bad reviews, the reason that fans don't like what they see, it's just because all the damn racists out there, Jay. It's MAGA trolls, it's racist, it's blah, blah, blah. Well, we finally have our first hint of what this show is performing like when it comes to the numbers. Spoiler alert. Kind of exactly what we expect. Ironheart ratings in the gutter.
Despite those efforts, the fan base remained sharply divided. For many, Thorne's remarks became symbolic of a wider disconnect between Marvel's direction and longtime supporters. With the backlash gaining momentum, Marvel and Disney kicked into full-scale damage control. Public relations campaigns were launched, urging fans not to believe the negative reviews and claiming that critics were missing the show's true message. Executives even enlisted high-profile stars like Robert Downey Jr.
They have Dominique Thorne, going out there talking about DEI, LGBTQ rights, and how there's no agenda there, and she continues to do so. But the other thing is that they also had Robert Downey Jr., and they had him roll out and really kind of prop the show up and prop the character of Riri Williams up above Tony Stark.
To vouch for Ironheart, positioning Riri Williams a natural successor to Tony Stark's legacy. But these efforts seemed more like desperation than confidence. Instead of addressing concerns about weak writing, clunky pacing, or underdeveloped characters, the narrative stayed locked on defending the show's themes. The attempt to use RDJ's influence to shift public opinion only highlighted the gap between Marvel's PR strategy and what fans actually wanted: compelling storytelling, not hollow endorsements. As criticism toward Ironheart continued to mount, Dominique Thorne, who plays Riri Williams, stepped into the spotlight, not to address the show's quality issues, but to confront the backlash head-on. In a bold and divisive statement,
Daredevil was a massive disappointment in the ratings for them, certainly. We do know, when you go and you look through these charts, the first couple days it was out, because we have 3 days of Ironheart in these numbers, just like we had 3 days of Daredevil in these numbers. And Daredevil in those first 3 days had over 300 million minutes watched. And that was with less possible runtime than something like Ironheart. Yet we know that it hasn't matched that.
Thorne argued that fans were focusing too much on the show's diversity and LGBTQ representation, mislabeling it as an agenda. She claimed that the loudest voices in opposition were driven by political narratives rather than genuine criticism. Thorne went further, praising characters like Slug, who she said broke new ground in representing drag in the MCU, and affirmed her pride in contributing to what she saw as a cultural movement. While some admired her passion, others felt she missed the mark, ignoring valid concerns about the show's writing and execution in favor of doubling down on social messaging. Thorne's statements didn't just spark headlines. They deepened the growing rift within the Marvel fan base. Many viewers felt alienated, accusing Marvel of sidelining storytelling in favor of pushing a message. For them, Ironheart wasn't failing because of its inclusive cast, but because its characters lacked depth. The plot felt forced, and the dialogue fell flat. Others, however, defended Thorne's stance, pointing to the importance of diverse representation in media, and arguing that backlash against it often masks deeper biases. The divide wasn't just about Ironheart anymore. It was about what direction the MCU should take going forward and how to balance inclusivity with strong storytelling. And this conversation wasn't ending anytime soon. Dominique Thorne's statements in defense of Ironheart and its broader themes didn't just land as isolated comments. They intensified a growing cultural clash within the Marvel fandom. As reviews of the show rolled in and social media lit up, it became clear that Ironheart was not just being judged on its writing, pacing, or visuals. For many fans, the very soul of the Marvel Cinematic Universe seemed to be at stake. Thorne's remarks about diversity LGBTQIA+ inclusion, and the legitimacy of DEI-driven storytelling sparked passionate responses on both sides. For a portion of the fan base, her words were seen as defiant and honest. They applauded her for standing up and defending marginalized communities being portrayed in mainstream franchises like the MCU. Many argued that comic books have always been political, from the X-Men as allegories for civil rights to Captain America punching Hitler on a cover in 1941. To these viewers, Ironheart must simply continuing that legacy by centering drag, trans, and queer characters. They saw Thorne's emphasis on characters like Slug and Jerry Blood as long overdue steps toward normalization and representation, especially in a universe that claims to be as diverse as the world it reflects. But the backlash was fierce. Critics of the show weren't just talking about the cast or themes. They questioned the core of Marvel's current direction. To them, Ironheart wasn't bold or progressive. It felt like a box-checking exercise. The story lacked weight. The pacing felt rushed. The emotional beats fell flat. And they argued that when a studio focuses more on messaging than character arcs or world building, it risks alienating fans who come for story first and symbolism second. That's not to say everyone criticizing the show opposed diversity. Many emphasized that it wasn't who was on screen that bothered them. It was how those characters were used. Representation, they argued, needs to serve the narrative, not overshadow it. In their eyes, Ironheart's LGBTQIA+ and DEI themes weren't the issue. It was the show's failure to integrate them naturally into a compelling, character-driven story. And when Marvel leadership and even Robert Downey Jr. stepped forward to support the show publicly, it only deepened suspicion that this was more about corporate image repair than genuine storytelling innovation. What makes this rift more striking is how differently audiences are interpreting Marvel's intent. One group sees Ironheart as a bold, meaningful evolution of the MCU, pushing the boundaries of what kinds of stories superhero media can tell. Another sees it as a cautionary tale, proof that the MCU has drifted too far from its roots, prioritizing identity politics over storytelling substance. This divide goes beyond Ironheart. It echoes the mixed receptions of other recent projects like She-Hulk, Ms. Marvel, and even Eternals, where audience scores and crit reviews frequently tell two different stories. And now, fans are questioning whether this trend will affect major upcoming titles like Fantastic Four, especially with actors like Pedro Pascal voicing support for the values championed by Ironheart. Will audiences walk into those films expecting more political messaging? Will they be open to it, or will they already be fatigued? The broader implication is clear. Marvel Studios is standing at a crossroads. Can it strike a balance between bold, inclusive storytelling and the grounded, character-first narratives that built the MCU's global fanbase? Or is it risking long-term alienation of that same base in favor of critical approval and cultural milestones? Thorne's comments weren't just commentary. They were a spotlight on this transformation. And the fan reaction, whether passionate in support or sharply critical, is a signal that the MCU's next phase won't just be defined by box office numbers or post-credit scenes, but by how well AI navigates the tension between cultural relevance and creative resonance. In the end, Ironheart may be remembered less for its plot and more for the conversation it ignited, one that Marvel cannot afford to ignore as it moves forward. Marvel Studios knew the stakes were high. As criticism of Ironheart intensified and Dominique Thorne's comments stirred online debates, the studio didn't stay silent. Publicly, they reaffirmed their support for the show's direction and for Thorne herself, framing Ironheart as a bold step in their broader strategy to evolve the MCU. Behind the scenes, insiders hinted that Marvel executives saw the backlash not as a sign to retreat, but as confirmation they were pushing boundaries that needed to be pushed. Robert Downey Jr.'s subtle but pointed endorsement of Thorne was a strategic moment. His support sent a message, not just to fans, but to Marvel's leadership. If Iron Man himself could stand behind this new direction, then perhaps there was still hope to bridge the old and the new. But for many fans, it wasn't enough. They didn't want reassurance. They wanted a shift in quality, a signal that Marvel was still focused on strong writing, complex characters, and cinematic excellence. From a corporate standpoint, Disney's influence looms large. Marvel is no longer just a creative studio. It's a content machine under one of the most powerful media conglomerates in the world. Shows like Ironheart are part of a larger strategy: appeal to wider demographics, expand global reach, and remain culturally relevant. DII isn't just a social mission, it's baked into the business model. But that same strategy risks becoming formulaic if it overlooks what made the MCU resonate in the first place: emotional authenticity, grounded stakes, and characters audiences could believe in. As Ironheart becomes a flashpoint for deeper questions about Marvel's future, the studio finds itself walking a tightrope between innovation and tradition, and storytelling depth. The decisions made now will define the next era of the MCU.